connect with family. And interestingly, over the period, people were actually hosting parties using Zoom. So Zoom actually was plummeted to the forefront right away, based on the pandemic and what was happening. Now, the transition. Now, we were used to the brick and mortar, sitting in front of our desks, doing our reports, everything like that, meeting with our superiors, meeting with our supervisors, liaising with our colleagues. Now, the pandemic came and we had to actually change. Now, one of the things that actually happened is that we needed an option to actually have that same feel, that same interaction, but virtually. Zoom was so popular because it actually offered free personal meetings, right? So you could literally sign up and start having your meetings right away. You could meet with family, friends, whoever, right? And also they have paid groups where you pay a subscription to actually have additional services. Now, what does Zoom has to offer? So as stated here, one-on-one meetings. You can actually host up to 500 participants in group video conferences. You can do screen sharing, join from any device, which is Android, iOS, Windows device. You can actually, it is integrated with either Google Calendar or your regular Microsoft Outlook app calendar. And it actually has built-in recording and transcripts. So these are the things that Zoom actually brought to the customer, and based on the fact that they were offering a free version, everybody was saying, wow, this is a perfect fit for me, right? So persons actually started to use Zoom right away and hit the ground running. No, I just brought this here because there are sometimes we're using the keyboard and we're using the mouse. And I thought it good to actually have some just to highlight some shortcut keys that you could use when you're doing your meetings. So then you don't have to use a whole point and click scenario. So this is just for persons who are comfortable using the keyboard and would like to have some shortcuts in terms of how to mute and unmute the audio, share your screen, stop the recording, and so forth. And actually Zoom's website actually has a whole list of shortcut keys that you can use. And at the end of this presentation, there are links that are provided here. And I will share these links with ACHEA so they can actually share it with their members. So these are just some shortcut keys here. Now, some of the things we want to go into are stated here. So we're looking at polls, annotation tools, Zoom registration, breakout rooms, all of these features you can actually use to enhance your experience. Now, for instance, you have a meeting and for some reason you may have to have some questions that you may want to actually ask, or you want to actually ask your participants to participate in a particular survey. You can design a poll for your meeting and actually launch it for your meeting and have your participants actually, pick the answers that you would have stipulated. And I will go through each of these in terms of a slight demonstration because I know we're at our time constraint. And trust me, to go through everything in Zoom would take more than an hour. But the good thing about Zoom is that their website has a full training suite that you can literally go watch videos. You can type in a particular issue that you're having or a particular phrase that you're looking for within the platform, and it will bring up everything that is associated with that. So let's see if we can just demonstrate for our Zoom polling. Now, let me just bring up my screen here, and I just want persons to indicate whether they are seeing the screen here. No, everybody seeing my screen?
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. So you're gonna create a meeting, right? So, and I must say that there are two sides of Zoom. You have the Zoom web-based portal and you have the Zoom application. all of the bells and whistles for Zoom exist in the Zoom web portal. The application on your desktop or on your phone does have a limited amount of settings on there. So if you want to fully configure Zoom, the web portal is where you should go, right? Now, I want to schedule a meeting. So I would click schedule and I would give the meeting a name. So I would say test meeting, right? Now you'd enter a description, and I'm sure everyone here would have done this before or would have actually attempted to create your own meeting. Now, there are different options here. You set your time, the duration, the time zone, registration, which I will get into later. You have your meeting ID here. Now, you always want to still make it generate one automatically because your personal meeting room is something that you only share with persons who you want to meet with right away. Because your personal meeting room ID does not change, right? So you don't want to really be sharing that with anybody, right? So you set your passcode here and you can actually create your own password for your meeting, right? So you can actually put your password here. You can enable your waiting room and so forth. But what I wanted to go down to, once you're finished, right? And you're completed this meeting and you click save, right? So your meeting is actually saved and ready. Now, if you want to actually ensure that a poll is actually a part of your meeting, you scroll to the bottom here and you create your poll, right? So you go here and you click add and you create your poll. You put your questions that you'd want to have there. If you type your questions here in terms of what you want to ask, if you want the person to be anonymous, you select the checkbox here, you give your poll a title. And if these slots are used up and you want to have additional questions, you can also add a question here. Now, just for this meeting, I would go ahead and say this is a test poll. Right? And you said, okay. So there, so once you do that, and you put all your questions and everything there, you click save, and then your poll should be ready for that meeting. Oh, there you go. Okay, so my apologies. So you actually have to put an answer. I forgot about that part. So right. So we'd save here, and then your poll would be here. Now, as a host, when you start your meeting, you will have all the different icons on the base of your screen. Now, once you actually create your poll, all you need to do here now is once your meeting has started and you're ready for your poll, you literally go to the polls icon and select it. I'm not sure if you can, well, I'm not logged into the account running for this meeting. However, you can actually create a poll while a meeting is actually being done. And how you do that, you literally go to the meeting itself and you do exactly what I said earlier. So the meetings will be running and also the meetings will be running and also you would be able to create the poll while the meeting is going on, right? Now, also you could actually add another poll where you want to do multiple choice, right? Now, it's similar to this. You actually create the title of the poll if you want the persons to be anonymous, and you select multiple choice. What this will do, it will actually allow persons to select multiple answers. So for instance, if you're going to create answers that would need more than one answers, then you would actually select multiple choice as an option. So you can tailor to either single choice or multiple choice. and you create your answers here, and you would just, and you click save. So that's generally how you create a poll, and you can create as much polls as you can, and all the polls will actually be listed here. So once your meeting has started, you can select the poll that you want to have occurring at that particular time, right? And each poll has a countdown. So the countdown would be approximately at least a minute. So it will give all participants a minute to actually respond to the poll, right? So another thing that we actually can use is annotation tools, right? So there are two flavors to annotation tools. There's a good side and the bad side, but the bad side I will actually deal with in the security aspect. Now the annotation tools, this actually allows you to annotate during a presentation. So, and this annotation tool, I'm not sure if I bring this across, if you will actually see it, because Zoom actually blocks out the bar. I don't think are you seeing my toolbar, or it's just a gray area?
No, not visible.
Okay, yeah. So Zoom actually blocks it out. So the annotation tool looks like a little pencil in your toolbar once you're sharing your screen. But once you click that, it will actually allow you to do drawings on your presentation. So if I wanted to do a drawing, all I would need to do is to select the pen and the color in this case, and I would just go here and I could create and draw and make, you know, all different type of symbols here using the annotation tool, right? You can clear it and actually allow persons to actually annotate when they're actually doing their presentation, right? So annotation tools actually helps us to accept in cases that we want to highlight a particular area, we want to actually make note or reference to a particular point, you can use your annotation tools to actually highlight a particular area. Now the Zoom registration, and I'm going to go back to my web portal, because as I said before, the web portal is where you actually have all the bells and whistles. Now the Zoom registration is actually done when you're actually setting up your meeting. Now, when you're scheduling a meeting, and this option here where registration is required, you want to select this option here. Now, once you select this option here, right, and you create your title, your topic, and all the additional detail that is needed for your meeting, then you click save. Now, what that does, when you click that registration tab, is that when you scroll down, you get this additional field where you can actually manage your registration portal. Now, what you do here, you can actually edit. So you can actually select your registration settings here. If you want to automatically approve persons when they actually register, or you want to manually approve. You can check to send email to the host when somebody registers. So that means if I am the host of the meeting and it's my account, if I check this, for every person who signs up, I would get an email. And then you can also select these options. You know, if you want to close it after the registration date, meaning that you don't want anyone to be registering after that date, and if you want persons to be joined from multiple devices, and you want to show social share buttons on the registration page. So these are some options, additional options that you can do. Also, say for instance, you want, while they're registering, you want particular questions to be asked of your registrant. Here is where you actually select. On the questions, here are the fields that you would select that you want to be displayed when persons are registering. So for instance, this ACHEA workshop, you would have filled out some fields when you were registering. So here is where the person who would have set up the meeting would have come to actually check the boxes that they want to be filled out. But suppose what you have here is not exactly everything that you want. You can have your custom questions here. You can create your custom questions by clicking new question, typing in your question, and whether it's going to be a short answer or a single answer. And once this checkbox is selected, meaning required, you have to get a response for this question, because if it's not answered, then the person cannot register. So this is where you create your custom questions. If everything under the question field is not available for you. So basically, if, for instance, what you look here in this listing, you say, well, it doesn't have something that I want to ask my registrants, come to custom questions, and you create your questions here. And after you have done all of that, you click save, and it will actually save your registration settings. Now, you can actually go to email settings as well. Now you can actually, so when we actually saw the option for it to email the actual person who the host would be, you can actually change or put an email address here that you want that email to go to. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the actual host. You can put anyone here, any email that you would want to the registration information to be sent to when persons are being registered, right? And you can actually see a preview of the confirmation email here. Once you click this, it will send an email to the email address that is listed here. Also, you want to brand your page. You want to brand your registration page. You can upload a banner or a logo. And I'm sure when you would have been registering for this as well, you would have seen where you saw the ACHEA logo and it was branded. So here is where you'd come to brand your registration. And also you can create your poll, as what I indicated earlier, for your meeting as well. So it gives you this option in it as well. So that is how you would actually manage and actually do registrations when you're using your Zoom meetings. Now, Zoom breakout rooms. Now, breakout rooms in this scenario are similar to when we go to conferences and we want to, we're having a plenary and there are other, smaller groups that are meeting in other rooms that we want to actually have some other subject areas that are being discussed. So Zoom actually facilitates that. Now, how does it do that? Now, Zoom has a option, and I am trying to see if I can bring it up here. I would have to just stop sharing my screen for a moment for you to see it. Second. Yeah. So let me do this. Okay. No, it's not coming. So Zoom has a feature that the host, so I wanted to actually show you how the breakout rooms work. But because while you're sharing your screen, Zoom actually blocks out the actual toolbar from your participants so they can't see it. So I won't be able to actually show you, but what I will do is just see if I can explain it as best as possible. Now, how the Zoom breakout room works, and actually, no, I have an idea. I think, let me do this. Okay. Okay. So let me just,
Hey everyone, Farah from Zoom here. On this brief video, we're going to show you how you can leverage our breakout room feature to take a large meeting or virtual classroom and split it up into smaller groups or sessions. You'll see that I have already enabled the breakout room feature, which you can find in your settings along the bottom. And that breakout room button will actually be right here. This is a button that only your hosts or co-hosts will be able to see. And right now we don't have a co-host in the session. If I manage my participants, I can hover over Catherine, for example, to make her a co-host. So she'll see this button now as well. When we're ready to split the group into smaller sessions, I can easily click this button to get a pop-up window asking me how many rooms I'd like to assign out and how many participants per room. For this example, it's recommending, since there are 6 people, we can split it up into 2 rooms. I can do this automatically or manually. So if we click on the automatic button, it'll generate those breakout rooms for us. Certainly if there's anyone I want to swap out, maybe I want to move Michael to the other room, I can exchange him for a different participant. Once I'm ready to open all rooms, I'll click this open all rooms button and our participants will be able to join the sessions that we've created for them. So we'll slowly see those people join. One thing that's really important to note is that as a host or a co-host, you can actually hop between the different rooms to talk to the participants. You can see here I have the join button. Now everybody's left to go to the rooms. I can broadcast a message to everybody and say, wrapping up in 1 minute. And this will broadcast the message. And then I can close the rooms, which gives them a 1-minute timer to rejoin our session. We'll give everybody a second to rejoin, and I'll show you 1 or 2 additional features with breakout rooms. There we go. We can kind of see everybody kind of popping back in. Now everybody's rejoined the main session. You'll see that I have the opportunity to reopen these rooms again, which is really great. If you have a very long session or a very long virtual class, you can split into these virtual smaller groups as often as you'd like. And the additional options here will allow you to automatically close breakout rooms after a specified amount of time. You can also change the countdown timer to be 30 seconds or 2 minutes if you like. I'll show you a setting where you can also pre-assign folks to be in your breakout room before the classroom starts. You'll want to navigate over to the class that's already been created in your Zoom portal. Under the Meetings tab, you can find your meeting. Scrolling all the way to the bottom, you'll see if we open this to re-edit it, I have the opportunity to pre-assign a breakout room here. And I can create the rooms and upload a CSV with all of my participants in advance so that their names are already populated in the room when I start the session. That's basically how you can run breakout rooms. We hope you found this video helpful. If you have any additional questions, please visit us at support.zoom.us. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.
Okay, so just for you, for you to be able to see how that was done, I had that video. And this video is actually from Zoom's training and support website that is available. And as I said before, the link is actually at the end of this presentation. So just going back to the presentation, let me just bring it back here. So what we just saw was the Zoom breakout rooms. Now, as the video actually stated, you can pre-assign and you can actually set the breakout rooms on the fly. Now, one of the main things about pre-assigning breakout rooms and uploading a CSV, and a CSV is just a comma delimited file with person names separated by a comma. Now, once you actually enforce or tell participants to ensure that they log in with their full name. So you would have their full name. If they log in with something outside of what you would have in this file, then they won't be actually entered in that predefined room. So one of the things that we have to practice when using Zoom is to ensure when you're typing your name, especially joining meetings for work or for webinars, you actually put a name that you can be identified as. And this is a security feature that we try to enforce here when we use it at the university, because sometimes you'll be in a meeting and you see somebody with a name like DK. Nobody know what DK means. Now, if you see a DK in your meeting and you cannot identify who DK is, DK could be anyone. Now, what we try to do is to tell our participants from before, when you're entering the room, ensure that you put your full name. Now, once we see somebody that is in the room that doesn't have their full name, the host will actually remove them, because we would have said that, hey, based on the type of this meeting, only persons with their full name will be actually allowed to remain. So breakout rooms, as stated before, operates in the manner where we can split the participants into different rooms, and your Zoom room will actually split based on the amount of persons that you have, right? It will recommend, if you have 5 persons, it would tell you, say you could split it in a 3:2 ratio, or a 4:1, well, not 4:1, but 3:2 ratio. It wouldn't be 4 because one person would be definitely in the group, but it would actually recommend the ratios for you. Now, you can actually, if you have more participants, then what it will do is actually split the rooms in terms of how many participants actually is on the call. And you can actually manually select it as demonstrated earlier. Now, Zoom background is something, it's a neat feature that we use. And it helps to block out anything that is in your background, because sometimes we're home, we don't want the clutter to be shown in the meetings, and we have to meet with somebody right now. We don't have no time to clean up our rooms or whatever it is, for whatever reason. Zoom backgrounds come in handy, and I have a Zoom background running now. So I could be anywhere, but my Zoom background has me in a space where there's nothing can be seen behind me. Now, to set up a Zoom background, it's pretty easy. Let me just bring my Zoom window across so you can see how I do that. So, okay, so a Zoom background actually, Team is freezing up. All right, but in setting the Zoom background, you'll actually have to log into the app itself, and so the app itself under video. So in the settings under video, it has an option there that actually states Zoom backgrounds, and you can select and actually, you can upload a background, which I did here, or you can select any picture that you have on your computer, or you can select a GIF, which is an animated picture, which is what I have in my background, to actually run your background. And it can be anything that you would actually be able to have in a meeting, because we don't want to put a background that is not decent to be in a meeting. So that is how, that's a reason for Zoom backgrounds, and that is one of the uses of it. Unfortunately, and as I said, it's kind of hard to actually demonstrate some of the stuff with the Zoom while using Zoom, because as I said before, some of the tools are not actually shown, because Zoom prevents participants from seeing my toolbar. It will only appear as this gray bar that is across the screen. Now, the Zoom background, as I said before, will actually just block out anything that is behind you. Now, when you want to ask questions in your Zoom meeting, there are 2 ways you can do it. Now, one of the ways that you can do it, you can raise your hand. Now, that is actually a part of the option that is shown in your participant window, right? Now, once you actually are a participant, you can actually do a couple things. You can raise your hand, or you can actually use what we call non-verbal feedback. Now, non-verbal feedback, let me see, I think you should be seeing this here. Now, non-verbal feedback are these icons that exist here. And I must say, to actually enable non-verbal feedback for your Zoom account, you have to enable this through your web portal. Now, what non-verbal feedback does is once you have the presenter presenting, and say, for instance, the person is going too fast or they're going too slow, you can actually use this non-verbal feedback to say, okay, please go a little faster. Now, once you click this, then that icon will show up beside the person's name. Now, as the host, when I see that, I would say, okay, maybe I'm going too slow. Now, if somebody wants me to actually go slower, there somebody would select go slow, right? And when I see that as a host, I say, okay, maybe I'm speaking too fast. Now, if I ask a question and you don't necessarily want everybody to open up the microphones and answer yes or no, you can use these nonverbal feedback icons to actually to say your answer. So it can either be no or it can either be yes. And the host would actually see the persons that were actually in the meeting. So this actually helps you not to have too many voices coming into one meeting or one webinar, because during a meeting or a webinar, oftentimes what we try to do is to restrict the amount of persons that will be speaking at any given time, right? Now, added to that, which we're kind of moving into the security aspect of it, the part that is most important, and I think this feature came into play shortly after the pandemic, where there was a lot of what we call Zoom bombing. Now, Zoom bombing is a scenario where somebody who has no interest in your meeting, wasn't invited, somehow stumbled upon the link or got the link and jumps into your meeting and start to create mischief and do random things. Now, once that started, Zoom right away put in measures to fix this problem. They created what we call a waiting room. Now, your waiting room can be set up before your meeting actually starts. Now, if I go back to the meeting here, if I was to edit this meeting, you could see the waiting room option here, right? Now, when you select this, when persons are joining your meeting, they'll be placed in a waiting room. When the host joins the meeting, the host or co-host will be allowed to actually admit persons, right? And interestingly, when you actually have persons in a waiting room, there's a chat window there that you can chat with the persons that are in the waiting room. So for example, if somebody is in the waiting room that you don't know, or the name is not familiar, then you can chat with that person to say, hey, what's your name, where from, and whatever questions that needs to be asked. And if you realize that the person is not responding or saying anything, and you don't think that you want to admit that person, you just leave them in the waiting room, or you can remove them from waiting, whichever you choose. So the waiting room is one level that you can actually manage participants coming into your waiting room. Now, we spoke about nonverbal feedback earlier, but what I wanted to actually enforce is that the waiting room is an important feature that we should always have, at least as a default, when we're setting our meetings. And depending on the scenario, no, if you're not going to use the waiting room, ensure as a person, as a host, that you actually prevent persons from actually opening their microphones or actually interrupting your meeting. And that is done via the same toolbar that is in Zoom when you're when you're in it as a host, it actually appears as a security badge. Now, when you click that security badge, and it's actually labeled security, and when you click that security badge, you can actually check and uncheck the options that you want enabled, right? So right now, if I was to uncheck that persons can unmute themselves. No, I'm just gonna do this for this example, right? I'm gonna uncheck persons that can unmute themselves. So I'm gonna ask somebody, whoever, to try and unmute their microphones right now. And I would take it that somebody is trying and cannot get through because I have actually unchecked the box that says participants can unmute their video. So you can actually prevent persons from unmuting their microphones. You can actually prevent persons from starting their videos. You can actually prevent persons from sharing their screens, right? So we are actually transitioning into the security aspect of Zoom right now. How to secure our meetings, how to ensure that we're not interrupted during our meetings. One of the main things that I mentioned before was the meeting room, right? We want to also enable passwords for all our meetings. All our meetings, we have to ensure that there are passwords on it. However, if we are sharing these links on any public website or banner, what you have to do is to ensure that a particular portion of that link is taken out. And let me give you an example. Because, because of the proliferation of Zoom bombing that has been taking place, what Zoom is doing right now is actually scanning the internet for any Zoom links or even any links that has been created, they would scan it and actually locate any links and check them. Now, if they find that these links actually has the passcode in it, then what they will do, they would flag it and email the host or the account holder and tell them that, hey, there's something wrong with this link. You need to do the requisite things uh, to actually, okay, so let me bring up this one here. Okay, so are you seeing my screen, everyone? Oh, and I didn't, hold on. Yes, let me turn on back the mic. Sorry about that. So here, the registration link. Now, everything up to the last digit, you can actually put on any flyer or any public space. Everything else afterwards should be removed, right? The entire link can, however, be shared internally, whether it's an internal email or something that is just shared amongst the persons. But anything that, say for instance, you're gonna post this flyer on Twitter or on Instagram or on Facebook, wherever, always ensure that you remove everything after the last digit because this link will actually allow persons to come straight into your meeting. Now, once Zoom picks this up, they will flag it, email you, and say you have a vulnerability and you need to address it right away. Now, one of the things that you have to do when you're using Zoom is to go through your settings. And these settings actually appear in your web portal. Now, one of the settings that I'm going to demonstrate for you now is the annotation. No, nobody knew that annotation is a security threat, right? No, no, my colleague Javier is online. No, right now, and for the purposes of this meeting, the annotation is actually allowed by all participants. No, in an environment where you want to ensure that your meetings is not disrupted, then annotation should be only given to the persons sharing the screen. And I will show you how we do that. Now, if my colleague Javier is online, I'm going to ask him to, and this is not me because these are my hands right here. I'm going to ask him to annotate on my share screen for me just now. Okay, so imagine you're in a meeting and you're presenting and somebody is just marking up your screen and you don't know who it is. And you're presenting to, persons, whatever webinar, whatever you're doing, you're presenting and somebody just randomly just start mark up your whole presentation. Now that is disruptive. So what we have to do is to disable it. Okay, thanks, Javier. We have to disable this for participants. Now you can do this two ways. One, the same security badge that appears when you're sharing your screen. Once you select that, you will have a checkbox beside annotate shared content. All you have to do is uncheck that and it will stop. Also, let me just bring this across here. Also, you can go to go to settings in your web portal, right? And you would click on meeting and you'd scroll down until you find annotation. And I must encourage everyone here to go through your settings here, because this is where a lot of your security settings are and the things that you would like to actually have enabled. Now here under security, the waiting room is turned off. Now once you check this, it will be by default. Every meeting that you schedule will be, a waiting room will be applied to it. Now every step here you just go through to say, okay, do you want this? Do you want to actually you can actually block specific countries from actually coming into your meeting. So if you switch this on, it will actually allow you to select regions and countries that you want to only allow in meeting, right? So that's another feature. Now, all you need to do is to scroll down here. It's in basic, just trying to find it really quick. Okay, here it is, annotation. It is turned on. However, what you have to do is ensure that only the user who is sharing this screen can annotate. Once that is checked, then there cannot be any annotation. Now, you saw annotation being done just now on my screen. However, it is not the Zoom account. It's not the Zoom account that I'm showing you here that was used. This is a different Zoom account. So in that Zoom account, they would have to go to settings and ensure that this checkbox is checked. Because if it's not checked, then they could actually experience what just happened just now. Now, how do you actually prevent malicious interruptions? How do you, or if you're having a malicious interruption, what do you do, right? I just went into how you disable the chat, sharing videos, unmuting. But how do you suspend a meeting if there's something malicious? Something is happening in your meeting. Now, everything goes back to that security badge in your toolbar. That security badge in your toolbar has every security option that you will need during your meeting. Now, there's an option there. Once you click that security badge, it has an option that says suspend participant activities. What that will do, it will lock down all participant activities. They cannot share screen, they cannot chat, they cannot anything. It will lock them down, right? And also, if you know who is actually doing the disruptions, you can easily actually remove them by if you know somebody that is there, if you see somebody that is doing something bad, and you see the name, all you have to do is click on more and actually remove them. And once you click remove, then they'll be out. However, they can rejoin. Now, going back to the settings that I just went through in your portal, there's an option there that says prevent persons who are removed from rejoining. So those are just some of the things that you can do to actually prevent persons who you have removed from your meeting to actually rejoin. And that same security badge, it allows you to disable the chat. As I said earlier, it allows you to prevent persons from starting their videos. It prevents persons from unmuting their mics and sharing their screen. So each option is just a little checkbox that you just need to check once your meeting has started. And importantly, you have an option to lock your meeting, literally prevent any new persons from coming in. Now, once you do that, there's no way anybody who has a link cannot come into your meeting. Persons use this feature once they have an idea of the participants who are attending. And once these persons are accounted for in the meeting, you can literally lock your meeting. And that option again is actually at that security badge icon in your toolbar. So once you lock your meeting, anybody who has that link who is trying to come in will not get in. Similar to when you're in school late and the gate lock, you can't get in, right? So that is how you would actually lock down your meeting. And one of the most important things for persons who have the Zoom application installed on their machines or on their phones, always, always, always check for updates. Zoom has been running updates several times over the last couple of months. It was, I think up to yesterday, there's a new update that came out because they're constantly changing, constantly evolving. And we want to ensure that you actually have the latest update. And there's one more thing that I wanted to show you when it comes to Zoom. And I'm not sure if much persons know about this, but say for instance, you wanted to, right. So your recordings. Now, you know, when we record to the cloud, when we have a meeting such as this and it's being recorded, you can record in two ways. You can record and it's downloaded to your computer, right? And you can record and it's uploaded to the cloud. And actually that option is actually set when you're scheduling your meeting. So if I'm scheduling a meeting and you wanted to record your meeting, right? So it's an automatically record meeting. Where do you want it? On your local computer or in the cloud? So you select whichever option it is, right? Now, once you select the cloud, and this is for cloud only, right? Once you select cloud, when you actually go to view your recordings, right? There's something that you can do. Now, if you're sharing this recording with persons, you can share it from the platform. However, you can share it and actually ensure that how you're sharing it, it's in a secure manner. So when you click share, these are the options that are given to you. Now, if this is checked, that means anybody that has the link that you would have shared can access your recording. Now, if you select this, only authenticated persons can view. Now, this is actually only, so authenticated persons in this aspect is persons who have a Zoom account. Now, not everyone will have a Zoom account, but if you know that is somebody that has a Zoom account that you're sharing with, and you select this option, and they are a part of your Zoom chat, because you can actually add persons to your Zoom chat whenever you're in your Zoom application. Similarly to when you have like Skype, where you have persons that you can actually add to a chat. Now, once they are part of your Zoom account, you can actually use this option if you're sending it to them. Now, say for instance, you want to add an expiry date to the link. You can actually switch this on and select an expiry date. You can actually prevent viewers from downloading. So if this is switched off, they can only view it from the web. They can't download it, they can't do anything, they can only view it. And also you can set a password here for persons accessing the link. And also you can actually edit the sharing information here, right? Now, this here, this on demand is actually allows you to, once this is on, you actually are giving them the options to register to get the recording. Now, once you do that, you will actually have an idea of who is going to be, who will be looking at the recording, because once they try to actually access the recording, they will have to fill out their details to get the recording. So this is just a neat way that you can actually share your recordings in a more secure manner. All right. And I think that, right, so here, so these are the links that I had provided in the presentation here, that here you can actually go and get all the Zoom training that you would need. It has all the different features, all the different categories that you can think of where Zoom is. And the link below is basically a link to all the, what we call hotkeys, the keyboard shortcuts that will allow you to be able to use Zoom without the point and click using the mouse. If the keyboard is your safe space, then hotkeys will be good for you. So that is it, and I thank everyone for listening, and I'm open for questions.
Yes, thank you, Duane. You have provided us with quite a lot. I've been using Zoom for a very long time, and there are quite a few things that I learned in this session. There are a few questions from the chat. So what I will do is that I will ask one now, and then I will ask anyone who has a question to ask the questions. And whenever there's a break, I will ask those additional questions. First question, you said, you can lock the room. If the room is locked and someone who is a legitimate participant gets knocked out because of internet issues, can they re-enter?
So no, once the room is locked, it's locked. So it's like you're locking a door. So it would be good if somebody is kicked out during the meeting. I guess they would have to find some way to indicate to the host that they have been kicked out, and then the person would readmit them. However, when it's locked, they will appear in your waiting room. You know? So you won't be if the host is paying attention, they will actually see the persons in the waiting room. But once the room is locked, that's it.
Okay. Right. So and let me take a question from the audience. Any questions? You could unmute your mic or you can raise your hand. Let me see who is asking.
Good afternoon.
Okay. Before you go, please identify yourself and ask your question.
Smith, University of Technology, Jamaica. I'd like to know about the level of security of saving my recordings on the cloud.
Okay, well,
I'm concerned about any security risks.
Well, so my recommendation would be that once you think that your meeting is of a sensitive nature, then you would actually do that recording and select the computer. However, if you select that option, then you have to be mindful that when your meeting ends, you cannot turn off that machine until that recording has been encoded and the download links sent to your machine. Now, that will take time based on the length of your meeting, because a meeting that is held for an entire day, that encoding process will take time. So what you find, persons may use the cloud because they can just any meeting can leave it, and then that process is just happens in the background. However, if you, as the individual or the persons that are having their meeting and they feel that this is of a sensitive nature, then you should opt for using the computer. However, the security aspect around the Zoom recording being in the cloud, only options available to you are what I showed you there. So I would say the security is actually two-tiered. They give you the options to secure it, but you, the individual, has to say, okay, is this enough? And based on what is being discussed, if you're talking about sensitive information that you don't want anybody to actually hear, then for me, I would take the option of saving that recording to my computer.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Duane. Before I take the next question, let me take a question from the chat. The question was asked to explain the webinar option versus the meeting options available in Zoom.
Okay, so the webinar option is typically slightly different from what we're experiencing now. So with the webinar option, and the webinar option is a component of Zoom. So you would have to purchase the webinar option as a part of your Zoom your Zoom subscription. Now, what the webinar option allows you to, allows you a lot more participants and management. Now, what does that mean? So you can actually indicate or actually assign presenters. So in this case, if we were having a webinar and we have assigned myself and Dr. Lawrence presenter options, nobody else can present. The only person that can present is persons who are assigned presenter privileges. And then it actually allows you to close all audio feedback. So therefore, the only way participants can participate in that webinar is by chat, right? In this case, even though you can close the chat and prevent persons, you can actually open it and allow persons to chat. You can allow persons to talk. In the webinar option, you literally can only chat via the chat box. So because of the amount of persons that you're delivering to in a webinar, using just the chat feature actually allows you to manage it easier. So those are just some differences with the webinar. And as I said earlier, it just allows a lot more participants to be involved in the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any question from the floor? Any more questions from the floor? Okay, a question from the chat. With your videos, with your recordings, is there any mechanism to know how many times your video has been watched?
So I think with the on-demand feature, it can be done. However, I must admit I've never tried it, but based on the fact that it allows you to register for the actual recording, then you should be able to actually get some feedback from that. But that is an option that I myself have never tried before. And I will definitely look further into that and share that with the wider group.
Okay. Another question says, when I try to use virtual background, my PC asks for green background. What is that?
Oh, so for virtual backgrounds, you can actually, so it gives you options. So when you select your virtual background, you would see some predefined backgrounds that are there. And it actually asks you if you have a green background. Now, a green background is what they use in movies. They call it green screen. Now, when you have a green screen, it's just a screen behind you that's green, as the word states. And it allows you to cast anything on that background, on that green screen, because it's easier to actually, for video purposes, it actually allows a more seamless background. So whenever, I don't know, sometimes you see persons using their virtual background, like when I'm moving now, sometimes you might see a little distortion, right? And the background is, you know, my fingers probably disappearing like that. When you're using a green screen behind you, there's nothing like that happens. You actually look like it in the room, and the background looks real. No, so that is what it will ask you for. But you don't have to select that option. You can just select one of the regular default options or upload your own background. It could be a picture, it could be a little GIF that in terms of what I have running there. So the green screen, most persons who use that is like persons who are doing like live events and they want their background to look polished.
Okay. Asking again, anybody with a question from the chat, from the audience? Please indicate your name and your question, your affiliation and your question. I still have a few questions from the chat. So while you're making up your mind, let me ask one of them. One question was asked is, does the virtual background use more data than the default background?
Yes. So the virtual background, well, let me put it in this context. Once you turn on your video, once you turn on your video in any meeting, you start to use more data than just for audio. And once you actually go a level up in terms of putting in a background, whether it be just a default background or something that what I have behind here, it actually pulls on your data more. Because what does that mean? It means that all that information that is being casted from your webcam has to be ingested into Zoom and pushed out to everybody else. Now, if you're not on any steady bandwidth, then you will find that when you're talking, you find that you may have times where you're talking and your voice gets chipping out. Now, in those scenarios, sometimes the best thing to do is just turn off your video or your audio to come through more clearly. And I've seen that many times where persons are in meetings and they're actually speaking, and then you hear their mics, their audio starts to go in and out. Once they turn off their video, then it smooths out. But that is totally reliant on the connection.
Okay. Option again, anyone with any questions? I still have a couple of questions from the chat. One of the questions that was asked very early on is, does your polling, does it allow for open-ended questions?
Well, the polling, you see, you can actually, it gives you the option to create your own. I remember I had actually had customized questions. No, I've never seen it open-ended question being used. However, I think based on what we saw, open questions could be allowed, because you could literally, so in this scenario, you could actually put something in your poll and basically use the nonverbal feedback to actually have persons to respond to it. But that is something I would really like to test, though, because I've never seen it used in that way.
Okay. Anybody's hand is up? I don't see any hand up here. Okay, I have two more questions here. The waiting room, you indicated that there is a chat facility. Is that chat a private chat or is it an everyone chat?
Could you repeat the question?
Okay, when someone is in the waiting room, you said that you can chat with that person to find out who that person is.
Right.
Is that chat a private chat or is it for everyone who is in the waiting room?
This is for everyone who's in the waiting room.
Okay. Okay, good. There was a follow-up question to the green background, and it reads, let me see here, right. How much more memory for your computer or technical expertise do you need to operate with a green background, with a green screen?
Well, So the using a green screen is not necessarily reliant on your PC of such. You can have a standard machine with, with like 4 to 6 gigs of RAM. What is important is your camera that you're using, and also um, you have to ensure that your your um, your connection is good, because those are the two most important. So your webcam and your connection. Now, sometimes we have PCs that may slow down during that kind of scenario. It's not necessarily reliant on the specs of the machine. It could be just reliant on what has already been installed on the machine. It could be because we have our computers using it to doing varying things. Now, a lot of things can affect performance of your machine. So the specifications is not the cause or the reliant thing that causes anything to slow down or anything like that. What you have to keep in mind is that the computers that we're using, because we use it to do everyday stuff, and we install different software, we install different programs, all of these things are running in the background. Now, once you incorporate a facility like that, running your green screen and everything like that, it's just an additional resource. So basically a machine is telling that, hey, I'm kind of depleted in resources now, so you need to slow down. So I would say once you have a good functioning machine, good bandwidth and a good camera, you should be good. However, if you want to ensure that you actually have just an average type of specifications, I would suggest that any computer doing that kind of a thing shouldn't have less than 6 gigs of RAM and a i5 processor. Yeah.
Okay, all right. We'll take just one last question. Since there are no more questions, well, there are no questions from the floor, so I'll just take the last question from the chat. In terms of web version, do I need special privilege from my organization to edit the settings? Let me just read this again. In terms of web version, okay, I think it is in terms of the web version, the settings.
Right.
Do I need special privilege from my organization to edit the settings?
No. So what you saw, so once you have a Zoom account, you will have you can go into the Zoom portal. Now, what I displayed earlier was the account that I have. So I signed in with my credentials and I was showing you the settings within my Zoom account. So once you have a Zoom account, you can edit your settings. However, if your Zoom subscription is managed by a company or an organization, then there's a higher level that you can that can be set up. But if that doesn't exist, you can easily log into your Zoom account and make your adjustments.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a question in the waiting room, but we're technically out of time. So I think we can deal with that afterwards. I would now like to ask Miss Michelle Holness to deliver the vote of thanks. Michelle?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Edward. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Association of Caribbean Higher Education Administrators, I wish to give a big thank you to our guest presenter, Mr. Duane Kildare, for his very informative workshop, which is entitled Facilitating a Successful Workshop or Meeting Using Zoom. I am very certain that we have learned a lot from this workshop, and we will go on to utilize this information in our professional and even social lives. I must say that the workshop was of great interest as we learned. Sorry about that. Right. I must say that this workshop was of great interest as we learned how to utilize the Zoom features, such as how to schedule a meeting, create a poll, how to register participants, how to organize breakout rooms, as well as the importance of security when hosting meetings. I must admit that I am no techie. And what was new to me was that Zoom allowed you to have a virtual background and that you could actually vet persons in a virtual waiting room. So I'm very appreciative of experiencing this workshop. We are indeed grateful to Mr. Kildare for demonstrating his savvy technical skills, along with his friend, though for a brief while, in doing this presentation, as well as responding to all the questions posed during the question and answer session. We are all inspired by your great presentation. Once again, thank you, Mr. Kildare. With that being said, I also wish to thank Dr. Thomas Edward of the ACHEA Barbados chapter for his welcome and opening remarks earlier, his moderating of the session, as well as Miss Beverly Wood from the UWI Caville campus for her introduction of the presenter. I wish to acknowledge the members of the ACHEA Jamaica chapter who spearheaded this organizing of the workshop, which was a profound success. Finally, and very importantly, I wish to express my gratitude to you, the participants, for supporting us in this endeavor by showing up. Without you, this could not have happened. Once again, thank you for supporting ACHEA. I now turn over to you, Dr. Edward, for your closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. I think you captured it very nicely. I would like to extend my personal thanks to Mr. Kildare. Your presentation was very informative. It is like having a calculator and using the add, plus, and minus buttons, but you have taught us to use many more buttons on that calculator. I would like to thank the audience. I'm very much appreciative of the support, and we'd like to encourage you to look out for ACHEA activities. We have a membership database. If you go to the website, you can find that membership database. You can register, and from there we can process you and make you a member of ACHEA. Just a couple of things here. Coming next month, we have a comedy night, which you will hear a little bit more about. In July, we have our usual annual conference, but this conference will be a virtual conference this year, given the circumstances. I also want to mention that we have that ACHEA website, which has been on for quite a while. We have done some changes, some modernization, and we'd like you to visit the website. And of course, we will communicate and interact with you via that website. On that website is a link to the membership database. And of course, this is our way of organizing our membership and managing our membership. I also want to invite you to take the poll. I think a poll would have showed up on your screen. I would like you to complete that poll. I think it's a 6-question poll. We are looking for feedback from